How do you see the action in D.C. impacting the market action? Obviously, a government shutdown isn't good for anything.
Yeah, you were going through some of the Fed speakers before, so I think that the D.C. government-related action, the more relevant, impactful, I should say, is from the Fed and the Fed speakers. What's going on Capitol Hill, I think, is a bit of a sideshow. Yeah, it's important for the energy sector, but I think at the end of the day, there's no government shutdown, so we're not going to have any kind of impact from that. Of course, we alluded to the permitting issue and whether that passes. And I've been skeptical. I continue to be skeptical. I think that's probably going to get dropped at the end of the day. But chances of a shutdown are quite low. It's not in anybody's interest to shut down the government just a couple of weeks ahead of the midterm elections.
So, as you mentioned, we have midterm elections coming up. Obviously, the market's trying to price in different outcomes here. So, if Republicans win, what can we expect? If Democrats win, what can we expect?
So I think a Republican win is generally gridlock because whether it's the House, the Senate, a sweep, you still have a Democratic president with a veto pen. Republicans are going to push heavy into an investigative agenda, a little bit on the tax cut side, but it's a different type of Republican Party. It's more populist, so those tax cuts are not as broad as they typically are from Republicans. They'll tend to be more targeted towards small business, middle class. But again, generally gridlock because the two parties won't be able to agree. Democrats, it's interesting because that agenda is not as quite flushed out. But let's just say for a second that they sweep both the House and the Senate. They confound the experts and keep both. I think at some point they start to lean into the 2024 elections, trying to tee up a stimulus package that would prime the economy going into the next presidential election. The problem is even if they sweep, but they don't pick up 2 extra Senate seats, we're kind of where we are right now, which is you have 2 Democratic senators, Senator Sinema and Manchin, who may not be as on board with the stimulus package, especially Senator Manchin, because of his inflation concerns. So, yeah, the agenda is a stimulus-oriented one. But getting that through, I think you still have a level of gridlock, even with a Democratic Congress.
So, Brian, obviously there's some big things coming up, the midterm elections, also, the questions about that proposal from Senator Manchin. But are there any other things that you think should be paid attention to that could impact the market coming up out of D.C. in the next few weeks?
So I'm actually paying more attention to the lame duck in terms of market impact. I think the lame duck is where to look. One, you're going to have a longer-term spending bill. The spending bill that's going to be considered this week only gets us to mid-December. So we're going to replay this all after the elections. Then you have the National Defense Authorization Act, which is an annual defense bill. That's going to be a vehicle for a number of items to move, whether it's the Safe Banking Act that the cannabis and the financial services sectors are looking at, payments legislation possibly that the financial services are looking at, and then kind of an end-of-the-year tax bill, a technical tax bill, not a broad tax cut bill, a tax extenders bill that could have some business tax proposals in it, either delaying or suspending some of the changes on R&D taxes, tax credits, on the business interest deduction and how that is calculated. Those are the items that I think are impactful for the markets. It's a post-election, not pre-election agenda.